Picture this. It's 522 BCE, and Julius Caesar is in Gaul doing what Julius Caesar does best, winning battles, writing about how brilliantly he won those battles, and quietly converting military success into political power back in Rome. He's been campaigning for years, and by now he's less a general and more a one-man brand. But Gaul is not fully pacified, and Roman stability operations are about as popular as a tax audit at a village feast. Then comes Vercingetorix, a young Arvernian noble with charisma, nerve, and the rare ability to convince fiercely independent Gallic tribes to cooperate. In Gaul, that alone is practically a miracle. He pushes a strategy of scorched earth, supply denial, and fast pressure against Roman weaknesses. It works. Caesar takes a stinging setback at Gergovia, and suddenly this campaign is no longer a victory lap. It's a credibility crisis with swords. After cavalry reverses, Vercingetorix withdraws into Alesia, a hilltop stronghold with steep approaches and natural defenses. Great for defenders, miserable for attackers, and exactly the kind of place where frontal assaults go to die. Caesar arrives, looks at the terrain, and decides he will not waste men on dramatic uphill heroics. Instead, he chooses a method Romans trusted almost as much as discipline: engineering plus starvation. So, rather than storm Alesia, Caesar orders a complete encirclement. He builds a continuous ring of fortifications around the hill to trap everyone inside. No one gets out, no food gets in, and every passing day does more damage than a reckless charge ever could. It is clinical, ruthless, and effective. But Caesar also knows this is Gaul. Someone will come to relieve the siege, so he prepares for the next nightmare before it arrives. Caesar's solution to that nightmare is audacious even by Roman standards. He builds a second ring of fortifications facing outward. That means the Romans now sit between two enemies: Vercingetorix inside Alesia and a future relief army outside. It sounds insane until you remember who trained these legions. Rome did not just fight battles. Rome industrialized battlefield preparation. The lines are layered and nasty. Trenches in front, including one section filled with water. Ramparts behind, topped with palisades and towers for missile fire. Then concealed traps, stakes, pits, iron hooks, arranged to slow and break attacks before they even hit the main line. The names of these traps can sound weirdly delicate, but their function is pure brutality. Trip formations maim momentum and turn courage into chaos. The Roman army isn't improvising. It's building a machine designed to win by geometry, labor, and patience. Inside Alesia, time starts to crush morale. Vercingetorix sends cavalry out before the noose tightens completely, ordering them to gather a massive relief force from across Gaul. It is the right call, and probably the only call. Without outside help, Alesia is a timer with no pause button. Food dwindles, pressure rises. Civilians suffer first, as they usually do in sieges. This is the least cinematic part of ancient warfare, and the most real. Meanwhile, Caesar manages supply, troop rotation, surveillance, and discipline across miles of fortifications. That's the hidden truth of famous battles. They're often decided by logistics long before the climactic charge. Steel matters, yes, but grain, timber, and sleep matter too. By the time the Gallic relief force approaches, Caesar has transformed the landscape into a defensive puzzle, one attackers must solve while being shot at, trapped, and counterattacked. When the relief army finally arrives, the siege becomes a full-scale pressure test. From the heights of Alesia, defenders can see hope in the distance. The plan is straightforward in theory and terrifying in practice. The relief force attacks from outside, while Vercingetorix's men strike from inside, forcing the Romans to split attention and reserves. If the lines crack in the right place, the trap flips, and Caesar's army could be the one encircled and destroyed. The first major assaults hammer Roman positions, but fail to break through. The second wave is broader, probing for weak sectors, trying to overload command response. Again, the Roman system bends but holds. Towers give visibility, fortifications buy time, and reserves plug gaps. This is where preparation beats bravado. The Gauls have numbers and fury. The Romans have structure and timing. In siege warfare, timing usually wins the argument. Then comes the critical strike. Gallic commanders identify rough ground where Roman works are less favorable and launch a concentrated attack there, while sorties from Alesia increase pressure from inside. For a moment, this is the crisis Caesar feared most: simultaneous assaults, local breakthroughs threatening, and the possibility of cascading collapse if one section gives way. Caesar moves rapidly across sectors, commits reinforcements, and finally launches a decisive counterstroke with cavalry and reserve infantry against exposed attackers. It's the battlefield equivalent of kicking a door shut just as a flood hits it. Gallic momentum falters, command cohesion starts to crack. Once cohesion goes, numbers stop mattering as much. Retreat signals spread, formations loosen, and what was a coordinated relief effort begins to unravel into survival behavior. By nightfall, the relief force is broken and pulling away. From Alesia's walls, the defenders can see the truth before anyone says it out loud. The last serious chance to lift the siege has failed.
After that failed relief attempt, the end comes quickly. Inside Alesia, leaders gather and face arithmetic, not optimism. Little food, exhausted fighters, no rescue coming. The city cannot outlast the encirclement. Vercingetorix surrenders, and with that, the strongest unified resistance in Gaul loses its center. The battle doesn't end with a heroic duel. It ends with strategic exhaustion. That is often how history actually works: less thunderclap, more tightening vice. For Caesar, Alesia is more than a military victory. It is political oxygen. Back in Rome, every success strengthens his position in an increasingly vicious power struggle. In Gaul, the consequences are immediate and severe. Resistance fragments, Roman control deepens, and the conquest moves from contested campaign toward hard reality. Alesia is not the final skirmish of the Gallic Wars, but it is the decisive turning point. For Vercingetorix, defeat becomes legacy. He failed to expel Rome, but he succeeded in becoming the symbol of Gallic resistance, proof that fragmented tribes could unite when the stakes were existential. For Caesar, Alesia reinforces a different lesson. Discipline, engineering, and logistics can defeat larger coalitions. Under command remains flexible under pressure. Or, put more bluntly, never underestimate an army that responds to danger by building more walls. And that is why Alesia still matters. It's a case study in leadership, morale, and operational design under extreme stress. It shows how battles are won not just by courage in the decisive moment, but by preparation in the boring ones. It also reminds us that history's loudest victors often wrote the first draft themselves. So if anyone tells you ancient warfare was just chaotic sword swinging, point them to Alesia, a battle where trenches, timber, and timing helped decide the future of Gaul and helped launch the next phase of Caesar's rise. At Alesia, the shovel was not secondary to the sword. It was the sword, just with better project management.